Bloomberg News reporting tonight that prosecutors within the Justice Department now believe they have enough evidence to indict Donald Trump in connection with at least one of the charges listed on the search warrant that led to the FBI raid on the former president's Mar-a-Lago home. We're going to speak with the author of that exclusive report in a moment. The headline from Bloomberg reads, "Trump prosecutors see evidence for obstruction charges." But with these things, there's always a caveat. Quote, a group of Justice Department prosecutors believe there is sufficient evidence to charge Donald Trump with obstruction of justice, but the path to an actual indictment remains unclear. They report that no formal recommendations have yet been made to Attorney General Merrick Garland. The article goes on to state that there is still a lot of debate within the DOJ itself about whether to indict the former president, who obviously could also be the Republican nominee for president in 2024. Quote, while some Federal Bureau of Investigation agents oppose bringing such a politically charged case, as Trump considers a 2024 presidential bid, others support action. Now, I've said recently that I now believe, and it took me a long time to get there, that an indictment of Donald Trump is more likely than not at this point in connection with the documents. In particular, if the Washington Post report is true, that a Trump aide has reluctantly told investigators that Trump himself instructed him to move boxes to his private residence after a grand jury subpoena demanded all the documents be handed over. And if it's true in a New York Times report that agents have surveillance camera footage of an aide moving boxes out of the storage room where the documents were kept. Again, unclear if we're talking about the same employee. But remember, there were 3 possible crimes listed on the warrant that the Justice Department got a federal judge to sign off on. Along with the obstruction, there was concealment, removal, or mutilation of government records, and also gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information, a.k.a. the Espionage Act. But I've long said the question of whether there is an indictment will all come down to the obstruction of justice and whether Merrick Garland believes there was a level of intentionality behind the way those documents were stored or handled or kept or taken away from federal investigators. The Bloomberg article cites the sensitivity of indicting the former president, which would be, quote, unprecedented and would likely set off a firestorm in a nation already divided by political passions and mounting tensions, and therefore, according to a former chief of the Justice Department team now conducting the records probe and cited in the article, in cases like this, you want to be as bulletproof as possible. Joining me now is Chris Strohm, legal and national security reporter for Bloomberg News. He wrote that article. Chris, thanks very much for coming on the show. So what is the takeaway here? Where does this leave us? Does this leave us that it now seems more likely than not that there will be an indictment, or are we still at the same point effectively where we were before your scoop?
Well, thanks, Dan. Well, really what it comes down to is that we're getting the first glimpse kind of behind the curtain at DOJ that the people who will be making these decisions have actually reached the point, at least on the obstruction charge, that they believe that there's enough evidence to bring an indictment. Now, we're talking about the line prosecutors and the FBI agents, but there's still a long way to go. This is going to be a process through which the DOJ prosecutors are going to be working up the chain. They're going to go up to the Deputy Attorney General and then to Attorney General Garland. And there's a lot of considerations that need to go into making a decision on bringing charges. Yep. And it also includes whether some of these other charges are going to come to fruition.
Chris, is there a divide? I mean, is that the sense that you're getting from your reporting? That you mentioned in the report that they're FBI agents who don't want to necessarily bring charges, but they're not the ones who make the decision here. Do you get a sense that there is a divide among the prosecutors in the Department of Justice who would be responsible for this as to whether there should be an indictment?
Our reporting right now doesn't indicate that there's a divide between the prosecutors. What we're getting is that there are people who believe that there's enough evidence to go forward with a charge of obstruction, but there are others in the building that want to continue to vet out the evidence and see if any of the other crimes are going to come to fruition and whether there's a larger package of crimes. Because if it comes down to just indicting Trump for obstruction of justice, that could be a very difficult call for Merrick Garland to make.
All right, Chris Strohm, congrats on the scoop. Thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.